Hey guys, it's Tamara. I'm back with another video today. Thank you so much for coming back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about traumatic bonding. We're going to be starting a brand new series in the month of June, and we're going to be talking about some pretty interesting concepts. Some of the concepts that we're going to be talking about includes traumatic bonding, imposter syndrome, Munchausen syndrome by proxy. We're also going to kind of pick and pull apart some other theories related to trauma, because as I always say on this channel, everything that I do has some foundation of trauma, and I think that's what sets my channel apart. And I think that's what also sets my practice apart as well, is that everything that we talk about comes from a foundation of knowledge of trauma. So you can guarantee that when you click on one of my videos, there's going to be some linkage or association to trauma. So today we're going to talk about traumatic bonding. We're just going to start off the month of June by talking about that. A lot of my clients have dealt with it, and I see it in people all over the world. Some people that I see in Canada, I have online clients, some consultations that I do in different countries. We're all kind of the victim, in a sense, of traumatic bonding. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today. Thank you so much for coming back to my channel, for those who are subscribed. And for those who are not, I encourage you to hit the subscribe button so you can stick around with us and learn, suggest videos, and benefit from some of the information that I talk about. So the benefits for you today in this video is that you're going to learn about traumatic bonding, and I'm going to give you 9 signs that you are bonded to the person who has abused you. So let's start with clue and red flag number 1, and that is over-identifying with the abuser. When you over-identify with an abuser, somebody who has physically abused you, emotionally and psychologically abused you, and even sexually abused you, when you over-identify with them, you are actually saying that it's okay what they have done to you, that you're going to be just fine with how they treat you. There's no boundaries. Your boundaries are very fluid, right? They're wishy-washy. Your expectations are pretty low, and you don't have the ability to protect and defend yourself. And so when you over-identify with the abuser, you're really telling that abusive person, I don't care what you do to me, I'm going to love you in spite of. And while that may be appropriate in its place, you don't want to mistake forgiveness and compassion and understanding and growth and maturity for a traumatic response, which is over-identification. Now, traumatic bonding is pretty much the idea that somebody has confused you about who they are. And the individual who has abused you, in whatever fashion they have, they alternate between 2 positions. One is the loving, the kind, the compassionate, funny, happy-go-lucky person. And 2, the other side is that mean, cruel, abusive person who lose sight of the relationship and who you are to them. And so what happens is that the individual alternates between those 2 sides, the nice side and the bad side. And so because you can't marry the 2, and it doesn't make sense that the individual can be 2 different things at the same time, what happens is cognitive dissonance. And that's the idea that you experience distress and stress at the fact that this person can be 2 very different people in your world. So because of that distress, you drop one idea and you favor the other. So instead of you saying, this is an abusive person, I'm going to get away from them, you actually take and hold up and support and you become comfortable with the good side of that person. And so no matter what they do to you to abuse you, you're okay with it. That's traumatic bonding. And so one way that you kind of marry those 2 characteristics, and you kind of rationalize it and make sense out of it, is by telling yourself that we have something in common, that we actually love each other, that my mom would never do that to me. She really loves me. So instead of looking at the fact that you're over-identifying, that you're actually minimizing your trauma to make things work, instead of looking at that, you become more positive, you accept them, and you over-identify. The next thing is feeling indebted. You begin to feel indebted to them. They need me. I can't leave them. I have compassion. I love them, right? You begin to feel indebted. you feel as if you need to support them. And that's where the abuse comes in, because they begin to catch on that you feel indebted to them. And so they manipulate that, and they get in there and they do what they want to do to hurt you, because they know that you're not going to have what it takes to stand up to them, right? That's the scary part. The next one is the mindset of he or she needs me, right? He or she needs me. You will not back up and let that person go. You will hold on to them for dear life, not so much because you care all the time, right? Not because of that, but because of the codependency. Somewhere there's an instability or a toxicity in the relationship with the person who has been abusive. And so most people who struggle with traumatic bonding, they have a very hard time pulling away and setting the boundary. And the first thing that they have said to me, some of my clients in the past who have dealt with this, is, well, he needs me or she needs me. If I'm not there for them, they're going to sink. Like if I don't pay his rent, he's going to be homeless on the street. Whether that's true or not really doesn't matter. But what matters is that there's a minimization of trauma. There's a minimization of abuse just to make it worse. In a sense, the victim tries to get around cognitive dissonance. They try to get around that toxicity, and they try to make it work and make it positive. That is so frightening, because that traumatizing situation can actually result in post-traumatic stress disorder. It can result in suicidal behaviors, attempts, and even completed suicides, and also increased anxiety and severe depression. The next is explaining things away for the abusive person. Instead of setting the boundary, the victim really does explain away all the behaviors. Well, you know, my dad may have sexually abused me, but he was just trying to get from me what he couldn't get from my mom. Or, okay, my dad did hold me up against a wall and punch me in my head 1,000 times. And although I had to get about 50 stitches and he busted my lip and the police came and they arrested him, I dropped the charges because my dad was just stressed out that day. That's the highlight for me of a clinical session. If I hear that, then I know there is something else going on at the core. This individual is either codependent, or this individual is blind and in denial, or they haven't accepted their trauma history yet. Whatever way you flip it, there's a problem with explaining things away to that extreme or that magnitude. This also goes into my next one, which is protecting the person and pleasing the person. I'm going to protect you, even though you've abused me and maybe raped me and molested me and did all kinds of things to me. I'm going to protect you. The other one is pleasing the individual, right? I'm going to give you everything you ask for, even if it kills me. And that is not self-sacrifice. That's abuse. And that's where a lot of people get confused. The next one is wearing multiple hats. So I'm going to be mom. I'm going to be daughter. I'm going to be cousin, I'm going to be grandma, I'm going to be everybody that this person needs, because only I can get through to them. And what happens in a situation like this is the individual, the victim, becomes isolated and withdrawn. And they also become depressed and lonely because they're wearing multiple hats for the abuser. But the abuser is never fully satisfied. So then the victim is working and tiring themselves out for much of nothing, because the abuser is never happy or never pleased. Covering up things, right? I know that I was raped and abused, and there may be blood from my busted lip on my blankets, but I'm just going to say I spilled ketchup. Or I'm just going to say my boyfriend raped me, not my dad. You know, I've seen those kind of clients in the past, and some of that is denial, some of that is cognitive dissonance. The individual really does minimize the issue and cover it the best that they can. And again, it's not protecting that individual so much because they are loved. It's not self-sacrifice, and it's not compassion. It's more of a codependency. And so instead of just, reporting that you were raped by your dad and molested, abused, you then say, okay, the blood on my blankets, I had ketchup because I was eating French fries, right? It's covering the evidence and covering up the truth because you can't deal with it yet. The victim can't deal with it yet. And last but not least, desiring love. And I, when I do speeches, and speaking engagements, the first thing that I have to ask a person in the audience is, first of all, do you desire love from your loved one? And I've had everybody raise their hand yes. And the next thing I ask is, do you desire love from somebody who's abused you? Well, they put their hands up again because, yeah, And one person, though, in a recent speaking engagement that I just did, said something pretty interesting. She says, I desire the love that I never got, and I desire the love of a commercialized dad. But I don't desire my dad's love because that love is abusive. It comes with a cost. It's conditional. And that makes a lot of sense, right? A lot of people desire that love from the person that's abusing them, right? Because they're a victim. So a lot of people desire that. But are you really desiring it from that specific person, or are you desiring the love from a commercialized dad that you have seen, or somebody else's parent that you've seen? So desiring love from an abusive parent, caregiver, relationship, it really does sink the victim further down into traumatic bonding, because at that point they're vulnerable and they're weak to their desires and their needs and their wants. So codependency takes over, fear takes over, desire takes over, all of that takes over, and it makes it very hard for the individual to walk away. It is a very frightening phenomenon, and I will be talking a little bit more about this as we move along. There's a really good book called Bonded to the Abuser, and I'm going to put that down in the description box for you so you can check it out. It's not an affiliate link. All links on my channel are not affiliate links, so I don't do that. So when you click on that, you will definitely have to buy it normal through Amazon. And I think you will like that book because it's going to break down and talk about traumatic bonding. It's going to explain it, and then it's going to help you to see how it plays out in multiple situations. So I'm going to post that in the description box for you. Thank you so much for coming back to my channel, guys. Thank you for being with me today. I encourage you to give it a thumbs up if this was a helpful conversation for you. If you have thoughts about this, or if you have experiences, feel free to post it in the comment section below. Let me know if you feel that you've been a victim of traumatic bonding. I'll see you guys really soon. Bye-bye.